Hey, everybody, welcome to Jimmy Dore Show. I'm here with the miserable liberal and Ron Placone.
Hi, Jimmy.
Hello.
Hello. So, Ron's going to be in Florida in January. Go to ronplacone.com if you're in Florida. So, there's some news happening. Now, we've been warning you about censorship, and the reason why we're against censorship, well, it's obvious reasons. We're lefties, and we're against censorship no matter where it comes from. If it comes from the government or the corporation or a religion, we're against the censorship, right? So the free flow of ideas, and if those ideas aren't popular, they will fall. How about that? That's where I stand. And I grew up with the National Enquirer. I mean, I grew up with all that stuff. They have all those. Hey, look, there's a Martian that landed in Ted Kennedy's backyard, and now they're having lunch. I mean, that's been there forever.
Crazy yellow journalism has spanned the history of this country. I mean, you can find stuff in like libraries and stuff of like newspapers they used to publish prior to the 20th century, and it's just wacky stuff they would just throw out there.
Well, how about all the William Hearst articles that he planted about the Mexicans all hopped up on the marijuana coming over and killing people? That's what he would plant in his newspapers, and that's how they got marijuana. Well, they used to call it hemp, and then he called it marijuana, that dirty little Mexican name for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's happening now is that they're going after our funding. So YouTube first did the adpocalypse, right? That was their overreaction to the mainstream news scaring people. And so now, you know how we get funding through Patreon. So if you have a Patreon or a PayPal account, well, Patreon is purging far-right figures now, right? The account of British conspiracy theorist YouTuber Carl Benjamin, this is according to Vice News. What does that mean, conspiracy? What is he? The account of British YouTuber Carl Benjamin, better known as Sargon of Akkad. What does that refer to, Akkad? What is what is a Sargon?
Yeah,
and
I don't know anything about that guy.
I don't either, Sargon. He was removed on Thursday from Patreon. This followed a removal in August of U.S. far-right political commentator James Alsup. Did you know that?
So I'm not familiar with that person either, to be
Also,
honest.
Benjamin's ban came a day after far-right activist Milo Yiannopoulos saw his account killed just 24 hours after he set it up to fund a magnificent 2019 comeback tour. The former Breitbart editor was cut off because his association with the far-right group Proud Boys, Patreon said. So that prompted Sam Harris. You all know Sam Harris, Mr. I'm so smart I can't speak loudly. Sam Harris, I'm so smart I have to whisper everything. You know, and you reach that, that's him wanting to be Chomsky, because Chomsky he speaks in whispers. So so Sam Harris does that same thing.
That always reminds me of teachers in the classroom when they wanted to get their class's attention.
Yeah.
Like really
Well, I've done that as a stand-up.
Oy, boy.
I've done that as a stand-up. Sometimes you get softer and then the room quiets down. When you want to capture someone's attention,
Just whisper.
What? But that was a perfume commercial many years ago. So anyway, here's what he said. I'll read it to you because it's too small for you to read. He said, as many of you know, the crowdfunding site Patreon has banned several prominent content creators from its platform. While the company insists that each was a violation of its terms of service, these recent expulsions seem more readily explained by political bias. Although I don't share the politics of the band members, I consider it no longer tenable to expose any part of my podcast funding to the whims of Patreon's Trust and Safety Committee. I will be deleting my Patreon account tomorrow. If you want to continue sponsoring my work, I encourage you to open a subscription at samharris.org/subscribe. As always, I remain deeply grateful for your support. Well, first of all, that's very ballsy of him. So he must be totally rich already. Sam Harris, I think he came from money. He must have a ton of money.
With how many...
He must have a ton of money.
He's had a few bestsellers.
He's got to have a ton of money to be able to do that.
Yeah.
That looks ballsy, and it is. I'm not going to say it's not.
Well, I just read that just on the internet, and who knows if it's reliable or not, about $2 million he's worth.
That's his net worth?
That's what I
No,
see here, baby.
I'm just saying. Not a chance in hell. Sam Harris is worth a lot more than $2 million. No way. That one of those sites says I'm worth $1 million. He's got to be worth 10 times what I'm worth. Come on. So, also, Jordan B. Peterson's free speech fight. Author plans to ditch Patreon as censorship battles rages. So he's also, so here's what it says. Mr. Peterson and fellow pundit Dave Rubin of YouTube, The Rubin Report, announced plans to build a better alternative for intellectuals and content creators. I hope they do it fast. I hope they do it real fast. And then they let me use their better alternative platform. I don't think I've made any videos attacking those guys. I did one about when Jordan B. Peterson tweeted out some bullshit about climate change denial. So that's it. Yeah, we do. So also it says, it goes on, we've been determining what our options are. We looked at Subscribestar, but it looks like PayPal decided to cut funding from them.
So I'm not familiar with Subscribestar.
Me neither.
Okay.
So, but I guess it doesn't work because PayPal kind of controls them or owns them.
Okay.
So, again, you're just a handful. But this is not that. It isn't as recent as people would think, because here's an article from October. It said the activists waging a war to make the far right go broke. And it's filed from Elizabeth King, filed to Richard Spencer. So it says, when Patreon dropped Canadian alt-right YouTuber Lauren Southern last year, so that means in 2017. Did you know about this? I didn't.
I did not know about that.
I didn't.
No.
So a YouTuber named Lauren Southern, the CEO of Patreon, explained that the company didn't make the decision based on an aversion to Southern's politics, but rather their assessment that Southern was raising the funds for activities that could cause loss of life due to her involvement with Defend Europe, a far-right anti-immigrant campaign. So, again, that sounds like far-right politics. The relative lack of transparency. I bet you if you open up a pro-war, pro-Syrian war, pro-topple Assad, you wouldn't get deplatformed.
Yeah.
If your show was all about that. Wanting more death and carnage in Syria, I bet you wouldn't get deplatformed. But here's what they say: the lack of transparency around decisions to keep or cut extremist bigots makes it challenging to properly credit activists for their efforts. But evidence that no platform works in this context is abundant. So that no deplatforming these people works, they're saying. But here's the problem: this lack of transparency again. All this stuff, this is being just turned over to billionaires from Silicon Valley, and they get to decide who gets free speech
Mm-hmm.
and who gets to make money off their speech. They get to decide unilaterally in the dark. So that's the problem. And then they get to decide to selectively enforce their terms of agreement or their terms of service. So you can't selectively enforce the law, and that's And so they're saying, oh, you're raising money for something that could harm people. That could be said of anything, right? That could be.
That's very vague and
That's
open
very
to
vague.
many different interpretations. And
Well, let's say I
lack
was
of transparency is right.
Let's say I was organizing a protest. Well, people get hurt at protests.
Bingo.
They'll just say that you're again. They'll say you're organizing for a violent protest.
Mm-hmm.
The SPLC, that's the Southern Poverty Law Center, they released a damning report just days after the horrific events in Charlottesville, highlighting the hate groups and individual bigots that used PayPal to fundraise for Unite the Right. The list included Richard Spencer, the white nationalist Cell Identity Evropa, and the Right Stuff, an alt-right website. Apparently, that was more than enough. The same day, PayPal dropped many of those groups named in the report. Now, you might find, I would probably agree, I would probably find their political views reprehensible, detestable, not something I would, but again, Why can't you let the why do we have to take away? That just forces things under. That makes it more powerful because then they can say they're being discriminated against and they're trying to be silenced, and that makes people more interested in their message when they see the establishment silencing them. That's what I think. What do you all think?
I totally agree about that. Won't that make them a martyr?
Yes.
And then you're like, oh my gosh. So now they're going to be able to, I think you started to talk about it, Jimmy, about that, let it be transparent this way. If we make it go behind the dark walls, you know.
Just like everything, even sex work, right? When you force it underground, it gets more dangerous. So that's PayPal. So also get this. So here's a lefty site. This was back in 2017. So this is an article from July 31st, 2017. Patreon caves to Tim Pool and the alt-right and bans IGD, which is for It's Going Down. The website's called It's Going Down. And so if you see the sub highlight, it says Patreon's rationale for banning It's Going Down was provided by the alt-right and duly recited back to them by the Patreon CEO. So they were being highlighted and attacked by a group of alt-righters. They wanted to get them deplatformed. So they kept saying, hey, to Patreon CEO, look, they're supporting stuff that breaks their terms of service. And so they just did it without warning, too, by the way. This is interesting. Despite the picture painted by Conte, Patreon has deactivated our account due to the pressure from the alt-right. Full stop. As we will show, Patreon has acted with a complete lack of professionalism.
And if anyone's not in the know, Conte is Patreon's
Patreon CEO.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Patreon CEO. And he put out a video letting people know why he did what he did when he banned IGD, It's Going Down, and that Laura, what did I just say? What's her name? The last woman?
Southern.
Laura Southern. It not only broke under pressure from the alt-right, but moreover used information handed to them from a group which openly embraces white supremacy and fascism. And lastly, it has sent a message to everyone that uses and donates on Patreon that if you piss off the alt-right, you might be next. So they show the Conti and the guy from Patreon's giving his reason why they banned them, because he said broke terms of service. But they say, It's Going Down says, this is total and complete bullshit. It's Going Down was banned as an act of appeasement to the alt-right, behind the gimmicks and wonky terms about manifest observable behavior. Manifest, that was one of the terms that Conte used. Manifest observable behavior. The entirety of Conte's video is an attempt to pacify the trolls. The vast majority of it's dedicated to explaining the vast majority of the video Conte dropped is dedicated to explaining in detail and with ample video, photographic, and text evidence as to why Patreon banned Southern, clearly in the hopes that her supporters would be convinced as to the validity of Patreon's decision. The brief section of IGD's banning mentions two articles. So this is It's Going Down. They mentioned two articles that were reposted on their website, IGD's website, and involved a minimal explanation and not even a screenshot to accompany it. Clearly, Conte was not concerned that the intended audience would need convincing that IGD should be banned because the intended audience was the alt-right. So they're making the point that the CEO of Patreon, when they banned the alt-right woman, the Summer, that they went out of their way to show screenshots and this and that about why they're banning her. But when they banned the left guy, they didn't do any of that. So again, this is highlighting there's a lack of transparency.
And and because of a lack of transparency, it should panic everybody.
Yeah, and exactly. And that's why I'm showing that here's a lefty site that was targeted by alt-right people to get taken down, and they did, to deplatform them. So now I'm with Sam Harris on this, but I'm not in his position to just cut off my Patreon. Do you think we should do that, Ron?
No, I wouldn't. But I mean, this is another example.
But I do want to find another platform.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Well, I mean, I'd like to think, because like the theme that we keep hitting at here, when the Facebook thing was going down, now this stuff with Patreon and even Apocalypse stuff like that, the law hasn't caught up to technology,
Right.
And there needs to be something in place where when you are supposed to be an open source platform, and especially when you have some control over people's ability to make a living when you're providing that service. Once you get to a certain level of influence, i.e. a Facebook or a Patreon, something needs to step in that you can't just deplatform somebody.
So I mean, can the power company just go, hey, I'm not sending power to Sargon of Akkad's house anymore?
Exactly. I mean, yeah. I mean,
can the water companies say we're not going to send water anymore? Can the
cable system say, hey, you know what, we're not going to provide internet any longer because we don't like what you're thinking.
We don't like you. We don't like you. Or we're not going to give you telephone service because we don't like the stuff you're talking about on the phone.
So, yeah, I mean, it's the same kind of thing here. And
so this is what, it's like, hey, I don't want to let you sit at my lunch counter because I don't like that you're black. It's like, either you have to do business and serve everyone, or you don't get to do business, right? Can you check someone's political leanings? Hey, how do you feel about immigration when you come into my restaurant? You can't do that. You have to serve everybody. You don't get to ask those questions.
You know what?
You don't get to go, hey, how do you feel about what's going on in Europe right now with the immigrants? Can I ask you that question? All right, you know what? I don't like what you said. You don't get to eat here. You can't do that in restaurants. You can't do that in hotels. You can't do that anywhere else. But all of a sudden you can do it with these services and social media. Some fucking billionaire in Silicon Valley gets to decide for himself what you think is not okay. Your political views aren't cool enough, and that's what's happening. Go, I'm sorry, Steph.
Well, I just want to cut off the funding of our military.
Yeah, how do I do
that? That's just, where's that lever? Where's that button?
Can we cut off the actual people who are actually killing people?
So isn't this Patreon's way to be thought police?
Yeah, of course. Of course this is. So someone underneath, so he tweets this out. Sam Harris tweets it out that he's closing his Patreon account. And someone says, good luck. Someone says, number one, Patreon is a private organization and has no obligation to be free of political bias. Sam didn't say they did. Sam didn't say, why aren't they free of political? He said they're not, so I'm fucking leaving. He didn't try to make them do something. He didn't. So that's, again, a straw man argument. Number one, straw man. And then number two, he says, you can be principled if you want. See how comforting that will be when alt-right fascists drag you from your home in the middle of the night. What the F? What does that have to do with him? So you either have to support censoring people of certain political persuasions, censoring them and deplatforming them, or you get dragged from your house by alt-right people. Those are your two choice. Those are my two. I think that's bullshit. That's a false choice.
Well, are you going to pick the lesser evil?
Oh, censoring? So I'll pick the
I think so, yeah.
I'll pick the lesser evil, which is and then someone says to Sam Harris, Sam, why are you taking sides with known racists? Again, this is this is about transparency. This is about a process. And the fact that you are okay with it being done to people you don't personally like isn't that's not the issue. The issue is if they can do it with them without being transparent, they can do it to you without being transparent as soon as they decide that you're not anymore inside the club. Whether you are or you're not. Whether maybe you have some inconvenient truth that the establishment doesn't want to hear. And they want to silence you. So that, again, this help. Why is that? Help you could take the same stances with, say, non-racists, but you chose not to. Why is that? Help a brother. What the? No, he's standing up for a principle. And that's why it's cool, because he's standing up for a principle with people whose beliefs he doesn't fucking cotton to. He said, I don't agree with their politics. That's what gives what Sam Harris is doing and saying its moral oomph. Because it's on principle. Because he feels like you do about their beliefs. He just has an elevated view of free speech.
And
So
it
there
really
you go.
takes
You help Fabio out there.
yes,
You helped
and
him out.
it takes well, so they're like protecting me from using my money to donate to somebody who's a bad person
Yes.
in their eyes.
Yes.
And what's going to happen in a month when somebody else decides that this other person
Yes.
is a bad
That's
person
exactly-
because I
that's
don't like the colors they
What
wear?
happens when someone decides that what we're saying? The CNN and the Washington Post already decided that we're saying bad stuff. Google YouTube already decided lots of our videos are too controversial to be advertised on.
So when a war criminal is on the board of
Right.
an association that's supposed to consult on censorship,
Right.
So who
Barack,
are the reliable?
Barack Obama gets to have all his stuff, and he literally ordered drone attacks that killed people, innocent people. He didn't just tweet about it. So then this person says, I'd say he would rather have a bad ideas that he would rather Sam, meaning Sam Harris. I'd say that Sam Harris would rather have bad ideas die on their lack of merit in the public sphere rather than have it suffocated by a system that wishes to impose their own status quo upon any competition. The least popular ideas are often the censor's wedge.
Nice going. Just a quickie.
Then he tries to come back. Fabio comes back with merits of ideas are not based on their soundness, though. Bad and damaging ideas that are logically incorrect are sometimes the ones with greater appeal. Do you agree? So what Fabio is saying is, don't you want someone to censor for you? Don't you want someone to censor bad ideas? Because some bad ideas are incorrect. And those are the ones that have great appeal. So shouldn't someone be getting rid of those opinions before you get to see it? No, you fucking idiot. Have you ever read a book about anything that has to do with this? Have you ever read 1984? Have you ever read Fahrenheit 451? Have you ever seen a fucking movie? What do you think you're doing? You're sitting here advocating for an unnamed person in the dark to do whatever they want to get to decide free speech with no transparency and no consistent set of standards. Willy-nilly, at the behest, as long as I dislike the person, you'll be okay with it. So this guy corrects this idiot, Fabio, the last true liberal. That's his thing. Oh, boy. What a fucking self-important... This line of thought strips me of my agency. It suggests somebody else do the thinking for me rather than risk I make the wrong choice. This creates a class of people barred from access to what boils down to wrong think. And a class that defines what it is. That's horrifying.
That's a smart mushroom.
That is a smart mushroom, Michael Kreitzer. Very smart. So when you say that, oh, but some thoughts so bad, shouldn't they deplatform them? Some of the most popular ideas are the ones that are bad and illogical. So shouldn't an oligarch in Silicon Valley squash them so I don't get infected by those ideas that are bad but popular? No, because that's saying that you can't do it for yourself and you need a papa, a little daddy, a nanny state to come in and do it. But it's not even the state. It's oligarchs, individual oligarchs. Unaccountable individual oligarchs in a clandestine way, not transparent, opaque.
And you know what, Jimmy? We've seen historically satirists censored. There was a satirist who got her YouTube page taken off in England because of her satire. So who's to say if, we have plenty of friends that are doing Patreon. And if you're a comic and you're doing Patreon or, however you're raising your money, what if you do a joke that somebody doesn't like? And then it becomes popularized, goes viral and people are like, oh, that's really pushing the envelope. Goodbye. So it's...
we were watching South Park.
Oh, my God.
South Park... they had Santa. It was an episode where Amazon opens up in their town and screws everybody.
The fulfillment center is in fulfillment.
So they go on strike and nobody has any Christmas gifts or anything because the fulfillment center is on strike. So Santa lands in the town square, and he's like, "Here, I'm here to help you. How can I help you?" And he goes, "Where's Mr. Hanky?" I like to say hi to Mr. Hank. They go, "Oh, he had to kick him out of town because he tweeted something offensive." And Santa goes, "He tweeted something offensive." And he hops back into his sleigh and he goes, You could all have fun sucking Jeff Bezos' cocks, you bunch of cunts." And he pulls off. I was like, did they just say this on South Park?
Did they bleep it?
No, they bleeped fuck, but they didn't.
They bleeped fuck, but they didn't bleep
dick or cunt.
They didn't bleep.
Wow.
They didn't bleep cunts or suck. They didn't bleep
Dick.
any of that. And guess who was advertising on that show? Amazon. Amazon was advertising on that show. I'm like, who advertised? Aren't they upset? They're saying the C word, and they're being No, they didn't care.
Didn't all the advertisers want to pull?
No, it turns out they didn't.
South Park can get away with it.
I couldn't believe it. But now someone could say, if they had to rely on Patreon funding, someone could go start a campaign saying, "Patreon, why are you helping
Allowing this vulgarity?
Someone to use
This could hurt Jeff Bezos.
Using misogynist language that could hurt women. That's violence to women." And then you pull you said cunt. That's violent. They can do whatever they want. They're doing it all in the dark now. They already deplatformed 800 frickin' sites off of Facebook. So there you go. There you go. What this does is creates a class of people who are barred from access to what boils down to wrong think. And it also creates a class of people that defines what wrong think is. Do we get to vote on what wrong think is, or does just some guy decide? I think some guy decides. Well, if it causes violence. So I'm guessing George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, they would have had their Patreons deplatformed because they advocated for violent revolution. They advocating for killing people right in their own cities. They advocated for violent revolution. Isn't that weird? The people who founded our country advocated for violent revolution, not peaceful, violent. Isn't that wild? Would they have gotten their Patreon pool? I bet they would have.
Well, here's the thing. We do have free speech laws in the United States, and
Right.
I think they're pretty good. They're definitely better than what I would come up with on my own. They're pretty freaking good, and they're a hell of a lot better than just some private Silicon Valley company.
Right.
Like so what we need is something in place that, once you're a platform of this magnitude and of this degree and people revive on it for their livings, they depend on it. Once you are a modern day town square like Facebook is, well, then the free speech laws of the United States have to have a seat at the table, not just billionaires dictating whatever they want.
So I don't know how accurate this is, but when I was growing up as a little kid, I was always taught the big difference between the United States and, say, a totalitarian state like Russia was that Russia would rather jail 9 innocent people to get 1 guilty. In America, we'd rather let 9 guilty people go to make sure the 1 innocent guy doesn't go to jail. That's what I was taught. It's not that way. Now it's just like, we don't care, and we're going to err, because we would always err on the side of rights.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't do that anymore. Since 9/11, we're erring on the side of safety. Well, the cops, their number one job is to come home at night. No, that's not supposed to be their number one job. The number one job is to make sure I come home at night. That's a weird thing that's happened since 9/11, and this is about them erring on the side of protecting you or safety. No, you're supposed to err on the side of civil rights. That's what you're right.
Mm-hmm.
And a liberal view of freedom. That's what you're supposed to err on the side of. Our next live Jimmy Dore show is February 1st in Burbank, California. Go to jimmydorcomedy.com for a list of all our live shows, and please become a premium member if you can. Become a patron. It's the way we support this show because they're coming at us, and we give you bonus. We give you hours of bonus material every week. Check it out. Become a patron. And if you can, make sure you're still subscribed. They unsubscribe people every day. I know it sounds crazy. It only takes a second. Please make sure and click that bell when you subscribe so they'll send you a notice when we drop a video. Thanks for your support.